This is a black metal box, which on first glance we would probably sum up quite quickly and think, well, it's going to be either side of 1900, and maybe it was used by a solicitor or somebody similar, and not terribly exciting. But it's a great example of why sometimes it's just worth putting the extra time into investigating something, because there's more to them than first meets the eye. So if I move in a little bit closer, our first clue is on the hasp block here, and you might see that it's stamped Milners. Well, Milners were known for making safes, and the company was founded by Thomas Milner, who was first apprenticed to his father in Sheffield as a tinsmith and brazier in 1791. By the early 19th century, around about 1814, he'd set out on his own and started his own company in Sheffield. By 1830, he had moved to Liverpool. And we've got all of that from this wonderful large label to the inside. So you can see it says Thomas Milner and Son, 1 Dawley Street, Liverpool, Late, Sheffield. Inventor and sole manufacturer of the double-plated iron portable safety boxes. And that's exactly what this is. We can see it's got a nice, pleasing blue colour to the inside. But let's tip it up for you to see. It's also got a double wall. And if we tap it, you can hear that it's hollow. And this is the great selling point of this box, was that it was hollow and it had soldered seams to make it airtight, thus protecting the contents in a fire. And it seems to have really worked, because on the bottom of this label we've got 2 or 3 references from customers who have written in, including one gentleman who bought one for his works, and one of his colleagues covered it in coal, set it alight, and the coal was burning for close to 3 hours, and afterwards they opened up the box and they found that the books and papers inside were still perfectly legible. So it did its job. It protected the contents, and it's quite interesting for it. That's a good sound of a hollow. So you've got the walls, which are hollow to the bottom, but also the top is double skinned, and that also feels like it's hollow. Perhaps not as deep as the walls, but still hollow. And Thomas Milner, on his description up here, aims the sale of these boxes to the gentry, solicitors, bankers, etc., etc. So it doesn't, on first glance, fit in with us as being particularly campaign or portable or used for travel. But when we dig a little bit deeper into Thomas Milner, we found that by 1824 he had got an order from the Duke of Wellington to supply boxes, and that quickly followed by an order from the War Department. And in 1818 the Duke of Wellington joined Lord Liverpool's government, and he was made Master General of the Ordnance, so he was in charge of ordering whatever the army needed. So these were probably also sold to the military, and you can imagine actually that they'd be very practical and useful in storing important orders and papers as they travelled around, and of course the shape makes them very easy for packing. And Thomas Milner allows us also to further date this from his label. It's one of the reasons I love labels. There's so much information on them if you take the time just to dig into them. Well, Thomas Milner moved from Sheffield to Liverpool in 1830, and we've got a Liverpool address up here. And it's an earlier address for Milner, Dorbley Street, Liverpool. We know that in 1853, once he had grown the company and got more success, he opened up the Phoenix Works at Smithdown Lane in Sheffield. So that address is not on here. We know it's between 1830 and 1853, but we can get an even tighter date line on it, because it says Thomas Milner and Son up here on the label. Well, Thomas died in 1849, and not long after that date, his son William, who was involved in the company, changed the name simply to Milner and Son. So that gives us a timeline of 1830 to 1849. So from an initial glance of looking at this box and thinking, yeah, it's a solicitor's tin, late 19th century, maybe 1900, we've got it to a much, much earlier date. So always, if you can, look a little bit deeper into items if you're out and about, going around antique shops or fairs. You might find that there's a nice little hidden surprise there. I mean, this box gives no clue as to the wonderful label on the inside until you take the trouble to open it and have a look. So there you go. It's a double-plated iron portable safety box made by Thomas Milner and Son, and we can date it to roughly a 20-year period from 1830 to 1849, much earlier than you would initially think.